Today, I'm going to open up and talk about my son and the difficulties we've had with his skin and food intolerances, which is something I never really thought we were going to have to deal with, and in particular, eczema. So, if that's something you're interested in, then stay tuned. Welcome back to the Evolving Wellness Podcast, as well as the Sarah Kleiner Wellness YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to talk about something that's not my typical content, but something that I've definitely been requested heavily to talk about, and that is how we've dealt with eczema, which my son is definitely on the other side of it now, doing better. Skin is clear, can tolerate foods, but what we did, how we handled it, and all of that. So, before I get started, obviously nothing on the podcast that I talk about is medical advice. This is just me telling my story, my experience. And something about me is that I like to figure things out before I share freely about them and go through ups and downs and process all the emotions around them offline myself before I open up and share it to thousands of people. So thank you for being patient and understanding about that. Again, I've kind of thrown this in to a few episodes here and there and said it's something that we're dealing with, but haven't really been ready to talk about it until now. This episode is not a sponsored episode. This is just me talking. But one of the things that I will talk about is the fact that we have had to be very cognizant. We were already cognizant. I mean, honestly, with my daughter, we have to be. But one of the things that I dialed in even more was laundry detergent. We had been using Branch Basics for a really long time. And with the amount of clothing that I was washing constantly between my daughter, my son, two adults that do sauna, that work out, it was just ridiculous and it was expensive. So we recently switched over to Truly Free, use their unscented, and I absolutely love it. So again, this is not a sponsored episode, but they are having a really, really amazing sale that's good through this Friday, February 28th. I'll put a link down in the show notes. I mean, everyone can use a good detergent, right? It's just something we have to do. It's like taxes. If you're in the market for a clean laundry detergent, the one that I use that's been really helpful for my son's skin, as well as economical, is going to be linked in the show notes, and I'll throw it in the pinned comment as well. Again, not sponsored, just something that we've really found value in and I wanted to share. So let's talk about this whole thing. First of all, as you can imagine, this was a shock to me to have this happen with my son because I did everything low tox before pregnancy, detoxing, castor oil packs, all the functional medicine doctors. I mean, so much money that we cashed out of our 401k, not only for fertility treatments, which didn't work, by the way, but also for seeing functional medicine, natural medicine, naturopathic doctors to make sure I was detoxed, to make sure I was, labs looked good, gut looked good, all of the things, right? And diet has been clean for a really long time. During my pregnancy was a really Weston A. Price style diet, raw milk, healthy fermented foods, lots of nutrient dense foods through pregnancy. Birth was unremarkable. A lot of kids, when you look at eczema, because I've been in the eczema community and on all the Facebook groups, and you do what you do as a parent where you just have to research every little last bit of it. A lot of the people that are in the kind of eczema community is C-section babies. The mother had to take antibiotics during pregnancy, things like that are obvious. With us, it was none of that. So I had a very unremarkable, easy birth, like very easy, no interventions, no shots for me. I was told to take the RhoGAM shot and I turned that down because I'm O negative. My son's actually O positive. And this is not medical advice, as I mentioned early on in the show, but I just decided for me, it didn't make sense to do it. So I didn't do RhoGAM. I didn't do any shots for me. I didn't do any shots for my son. No antibiotic ointment. He was left on the cord for 10 minutes, was breastfeeding immediately with no issues. Beautiful, right? Like picture perfect. And he was born healthy, all the things. And so at 3 months, this is when the eczema started appearing on his face. And I was like, what is this? And so I immediately started working with a homeopath. So a lot of people talk about homeopathy and they kind of just cut and paste homeopathic remedies off the internet and do a DIY. I was working with a classically trained homeopath from day one with my son and doing all the things. We did the full session, the evaluation, and then we were doing acutes. So from day one, I was trying to do that. From day one, I was going into the natural remedy groups, trying to figure out what I was missing. And he was reacting to everything I was eating. I had to cut myself down to beef, lamb, some seafood. I couldn't do coconut oil. He would react to that. I couldn't do butter. He'd react to that. I couldn't do ghee, no dairy at all, no eggs. Eggs were really, really bad. Cheese was really bad. So I was really just eating like meat and fruit. That was all that he could tolerate, which was really hard because I couldn't even get really into ketosis because I couldn't do a lot of fats. And being in ketosis while breastfeeding was not for me. I felt really terrible. And my ketones were like a 7.0. I've never seen ketones like that before in my life. So anyway, I was really trying to attack it from all ends to figure out what was going on. And he kept getting worse. At the same time, and this is really where I got into Dr. Tom Cowan's work and doing his new biology curriculum, was that I wanted to understand the somatic connection here, because my daughter, and it was a conversation I had with Tom offline that led me to study his work more. My daughter started having grand mal seizures about that time that my son started basically breaking out in head to toe eczema. And so I started seeing this nervous system correlation. Now, before I dive deeper, I will put this on YouTube, but I love that people always want to help. And they always want to give advice from a place, I think, of caring, really, most of the time. But it's impossible for me to throw into a video or podcast episode all the things that we did. So I know I'll get, oh, did you do this testing? Did you do that? Did you do this? Or what's really worse, because I know those are helpful, is you didn't do this. Well, it was this. Well, it was that. And it's easy to look from the outside at someone else's life and you diagnose or make a decision about what happened when you don't really know. So I'm just going to say that try to avoid doing that, and don't email me those sorts of things either, please. I would appreciate it, because I really have taken a while to get my nervous system in a place where I can share this whole story, because it was a lot. It was a lot that we've been through with my daughter having these grand mal seizures. And then all of a sudden my baby is like this perfectly healthy, amazing baby, picture perfect pregnancy, everything, has head to toe eczema. And I'm like, what in the world? And this wasn't just a few little eczema patches. This was head to toe, full body, to the point where we would have to sit in his chair and hold him at night to get him to sleep. We would have to wrap his hands so that he wouldn't scratch himself to the point of bleeding. It was very severe. And it went from like 0 to 100 very quickly. And we're doing homeopathy. We're doing literally everything natural that you can imagine. And I've got in my head the holistic health community. Never give your kid antibiotics. Never give them drugs, suppressive therapies. Yeah, you're going to ruin their life and ruin their immune system and da 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 da. And I see a lot of this. I think the gaslighting in the holistic health community can be as negative as the gaslighting in the allopathic medical community. And I'm sharing this also in the hopes that people will have a little empathy and sympathy that sometimes we do have to use modern medicine. My issue with the modern medicine is that it's overused, that a kid goes on several cycles of antibiotics and steroids, and it's just a terrible cycle. So I took my son for his checkup. We have a pediatrician that does not make us go through, basically doesn't make us follow the schedule, if you know what I mean, because I don't follow the schedule for my son because my daughter was injured by the schedule. So we don't do the schedule. And so we have a conventional pediatrician, but she allows us into the practice, which is good. And so at his 3-month checkup, she said he needs a round of antibiotics to clear his skin up. It's really bad. And of course, I went to my homeopath. I'm like, I don't feel comfortable doing this. I'm not ready to do this. And she's like, no, let's try more remedies. And he continued to get worse to the point where we were at his 4-month appointment and it got worse and we weren't sleeping and he wasn't sleeping. It was the 5-month mark that he had not gained any weight in about a month. And he was basically falling off the growth chart. That's how severe it was. And what tipped me over was that he had stopped smiling. And he had stopped interacting with us. And I was just like, you know what? And I'm on the phone with the homeopath like daily. I'm in the Facebook groups daily, like just trying to figure this out. And nothing holistic we were doing was working, honestly. It was at that point. And so I finally did take him to a conventional allergy doctor. And that's where we started seeing him. And within a few hours of us giving him the antibiotics, he was smiling again, happy again for the first time. Within 2 weeks, he had gained a ton of weight, was like a little chunky baby again, was happy, was smiling, and was sleeping through the night within 2 weeks, and his skin was cleared up. Now, this is where my issue with Western medicine is that what our allergist told us was that we would just need to keep putting the steroid cream on him. Even if his skin was clear, we needed to keep putting the steroid cream on him. And we needed to consider doing Dupixent, which is a pretty heavy duty medication. Now, if you're watching this and you have a kid with eczema and you've done this, I am not judging you. I am not judging anybody for anything that they do. Quite honestly, I'm just not that person. I am not the one. I don't have time to judge other people. I'm too busy taking care of my life and my kids. So if you've done that, and that's what you're doing, I don't judge you. But for me to do these suppressive therapies as a long-term solution did not feel right. And so that's when I found Dr. Anna Maria Temple. I actually found Dr. Temple before we went on the antibiotics, and they were the ones who talked me into it, essentially, because I was still trying to throw homeopathic remedies at him and all the natural stuff. And they were like, look, he's at a place where you just need to do this, but we're going to help you so that this doesn't become a cycle, because that's the problem. And that's what they get a lot in their practice. So it was an emotional decision. Of course, I was very distraught and very upset that we had to do this, but it worked. It cleared him up. Right. Then we had to unwind. Like, why is his body doing this? What's going on? I again think because there was no clear answer other than like, yeah, we live in a high non-native EMF environment. Okay. But we tested our home for mold, no mold, nothing problematic. And we have medical grade filters everywhere around the house, clean drinking water, good food. Just his body was just overreacting to everything. And I think it was my daughter with the seizures and the violent behavior and him being a little baby, basically like, I am so connected to my sister. I don't know how to cope with this. It's hard on my nervous system as an adult. Everything my daughter's been through has been very difficult on my nervous system as a grown person. I can't imagine how this would impact a baby, and him getting my breast milk with God knows how much cortisol in it as well. I don't know if that was impacting things. So there's many things to it, right? But I think at the root of it was a body and nervous system that was dysregulated, and it was causing his body to be hyperreactive and overly sensitive to everything. So yes, the laundry detergents, he only wears organic cotton, the food, but you don't want that as again, this is not a long-term solution. This is why doing a carnivore diet as a long-term solution for me is not a long-term solution, because you should be able to eat a potato every now and then. You should be able to eat vegetables. You should be able to have these foods and not have a colossal reaction of the body. And so my whole goal was, how do I get him to be more resilient? So that's where we were, again, Dr. Temple said, do the round, but we're going to help you unwind from this. We were in her program. And then we decided we would go up to Charlotte and actually see her in person. She has a program that you can do anywhere in the world, but you can also go to her office and become a patient of hers. And so it was October of 2023. We decided to just go up there and let him be a patient of hers and start doing LDA. Now, our allergist, who's a Western medicine allergist, typical, really good guy, really cares for his patients, good guy. But he was also suggesting long-term use of topical steroids as well as Dupixent, which I just was not comfortable with. And so I said, what do you think of LDA therapy? And he was like, oh, no, it's a total joke. Don't even bother with it. And I said, okay, whatever. I'd rather do that. I'd rather try that than go down the route that you want me on, because I don't feel comfortable with this. So we started seeing Dr. Temple and doing the LDA. We just did sublingual drops. They have an intradermal where they can do it as a shot, but they also have sublingual that they do more for babies. And so we started doing that with him when he was 1. And you do that every 6 weeks. Now he's just turned 2 last October. So I think we've been on the LDA for about 18 months now. And I think that's been really, really helpful at his body becoming less and less sensitive and getting his gut healed. So we have been very careful with his diet. I mean, his diet is ridiculous. It's crazy. He eats salmon roe, he eats grass-fed beef, he eats lamb, he eats avocado, fruits. Like, he eats a really, really healthy, pretty much animal-based diet. One of his first foods was bone marrow, but he was highly allergic to eggs. He was highly allergic to nuts, to the point where his cousins were playing with his toys and kind of touching him, and they were eating pistachios. He didn't even eat the pistachio, and his face started the next day. The eczema was so bad, it was like bleeding. It was so bad. So we had to work with doing the LDA and then just keeping his diet clean. And we've slowly, gradually gotten him to the point where he's less sensitive now. Little success story. He was at his cousin's 3-year-old birthday party last weekend and had a piece of cake. Now, do I feed my son junk food? Absolutely not. We don't bring that stuff in for my daughter either because of her health issues. We keep everything very clean, animal-based, low tox in this house. But he had a piece of birthday cake and he had no reaction, no gut reaction, no nasal reaction, no reaction, period. So that's a huge success. He can have baked eggs. He can have we haven't done the nuts yet. That's something he might be okay with them, but everything else he's been able to tolerate. And it used to be that milk would actually even just like touch his skin and he would get like these raised bumps, like almost like little boils on his skin from milk touching his skin. Now, fine, he can have a little bit of raw milk and he's fine. So I've worked with the nervous system, of course, just being with him, talking with him. When my daughter, because she still has struggled, is having something, I talk to him and I make him feel safe and I just do my best. It's not a perfect situation. I'm not willing to send her away because I don't think that good things would happen to her if I sent her away somewhere. In another episode, I'll talk about all the things we've done for her. She has definitely gotten a lot better. She hasn't had a grand mal seizure since November of 2023. I'm not sure if I mentioned that or not earlier. So things have improved with her, and I think that's helpful for him. But the nervous system regulation piece, I know that there are programs. Dr. Temple actually recommended a few programs, but I haven't gone down that rabbit hole just yet. I'm trying to just see how much of it naturally I can do without buying more programs, doing more things. But that's what we've done, is slowly done the LDA over the last 18 months. And I do think that that has made a really big difference in his allergic reaction to the world, essentially. Kept his diet very clean, but slowly brought things in, like it was like sourdough bread and then baked eggs. And now he had the cake and little bits of, milk here and there. And he's been fine. His skin is clear. He is in the 95th percentile. He's a big, beefy little boy. So smart, talking, thriving at this point. But, I share this because I think if I had followed the typical Western medical model that the allergist wanted us to, with Dupixent and topical steroid creams as a solution, that we would be stuck, right? And so the allergist essentially handed me a couple of EpiPens, keep these on hand at all times. You're going to need these at some point, and sent me out the door. And that's the state of the issue that I have with our Western medical system, is that that's just what they do to children. And this is a huge problem. This is what I found out while I was going through this, is that eczema is a huge problem. And it starts as eczema, then it turns into asthma, then it's ADHD, then it's just like it's a spiral that these kids go through. And I think if we can deal with them on a root cause level, we did gut testing, we tested for mold, we tested for parasites, we did all this stuff. Like, even though I'm not a huge, I did Tom Cowan's course, I'm not hugely bought into these things being the problem, but it was part of working with Dr. Temple in person for us to get these functional tests. So I'm like, well, let's do it. Let's just see what's there. We didn't find anything. We did Vibrant Labs. We did the oat test. We did all the functional stuff. Didn't find anything except for a little dysbiosis. So some gut bacteria imbalance. So, okay, we do some probiotics, fermented foods. There's not a ton you can do with that. We have done a little bit with some different herbs to just kind of, not as a long-term thing. But I think that a bigger conversation needs to be had with this whole eczema epidemic that's happening, because it's unfortunate, and it's hard when you go through it and your baby doesn't sleep and they're scratching themselves all the time. And it's just a mess. It's like, what can you do? So I hope that this conversation can reach some people out there that maybe are going through this with their kids, and just to give you some hope that he is thriving and healthy and happy. And I don't have to worry about keeping an EpiPen. I mean, I have one, but like, I'm not stressed out to the level that I used to be, that he would get a Cheeto or like something off the ground or steal something at someone's house and have an anaphylactic reaction, where I was for a while. And I think if we had stayed in the Western medical model, then, that could have been a thing. The other side of this that I mentioned that I want to just reiterate is, I think that the holistic health community has good intention, But a lot of times when it's a situation like this where there's just a giant fire, like the kid's literally on fire, we're throwing everything natural in the book and it's just not helping, right? And I'm sure I'll get judged. I'm sure someone will say something. I'm sure someone's going to make their own, draw their own conclusion about it. But I do think that sometimes we have to throw some modern medicine at something as a temporary solution, right? And then work on it. That's what Dr. Tim said. Look, I think this is what you need to do, but we're going to help you unwind it. We're going to help repair his gut. And guess what? He had to get the antibiotics that one time and he hasn't needed them since. And he's 2.5 now. Sleeps great, skin looks great. And so, yeah, I hope this helps. And I'm sure I'll get a lot of questions from this. If I do, maybe I'll do a part 2. But yeah, I hope it helps. And if you are in the market for a clean laundry detergent, the one that I love and use will be linked down in the show notes for you and in the pinned comment if you're on YouTube. And I will see you on the next episode.